Hi, it's Darren from SimNation. I just want to do a quick recap video of the WWPF, which is our Draft Day Sports Pro Football 2023 league here at SimNation. If you're interested in an online league, I'd definitely say check us out. We have a very active coach base and a lot of really great competitive coaches. Um, just diving straight in, couple big games coming on Friday, which is the next sim. We are 6 games into the season, or 6 weeks into the season, probably a better way to say that. Some games to watch for this week is Green Bay versus Baltimore. Even though both of these two teams are like I think 2-4 each. These are two teams looking to rebound. DWK versus Kevin. DWK's at Green Bay, Kevin's at Baltimore. I think they both need to start winning now, and I think both of them are capable of doing that. Another game to keep an eye on is New York versus Dallas, the Jets versus the Cowboys. This is DP versus Templar. DP's only lost once. He's coming off kind of a controversial win over New England. And then Templar at Dallas is just doing his thing. Well, his only two losses were both to New York. So will this be the third loss to a New York-based team where he lost both of his games so far this season to the Giants? Uh, I think a game that will be interesting, although I don't know how close it's going to be, is Oakland versus Arizona. Arizona right now is the leader in the NFC West, whereas Oakland is in second place. Oakland's struggling a little bit with Denham at quarterback, but if anyone's going to fix it, it's going to be Peter. And Arizona's just been playing really, really well so far this year. They're doing it largely on the ground with Alex Taft, who's a third-year running back out of NC State. And then really probably the biggest game this week is Denver versus San Francisco. This almost had the building to be the two leaders in the West, NFC and AFC. But San Francisco's since lost 2 games in a row. So Stewart's trying to get them back on track. And of course, Denver is leading the AFC West right now behind a really strong passing game from Lavelle, who's their star quarterback, and Johnson, who's their star wide receiver, although they're also getting it done on the ground. San Francisco's largely done it through the rushing game. Nathan Ford is a rookie out of Michigan State who is leading the league in rushing right now. So that'll be an interesting game to see. If we look across the league and just look at the standings, some initial thoughts is a little bit shocked to see Minnesota up at the top end. Rick has always been capable of doing this. I think like 2 seasons ago he was 12-4, so he definitely can win games. They're doing it with both of these teams are actually doing it with non-standard quarterbacks or not your prototype quarterback. Ronald Rice, who is a rookie. He was picked in the second round out of Alabama. This is not normal for a really good quarterback, but as you can see here, he's completing close to 70% of his passes. In 153 attempts, he hasn't thrown an interception, 10 touchdowns, averaging about 255 yards a game. That's really solid. Now, I think he's doubtful, which means that he may not play in this game coming up against Cleveland, which probably will make Bio very happy. But when we look at Minnesota, what you'll also notice, and we talked about their quarterback in the last video with Colwell, he is also having a phenomenal season. 154 attempts without an interception. It's not his longest streak. He actually did it a few seasons ago where he had 214 attempts and didn't throw a single interception. So both of these quarterbacks, not your normal guys to get it done, but they both are getting it done. DWK, I mentioned him earlier. He needs to get turned around pretty quick. So Green Bay hopefully will be able to do that, but they're facing a Baltimore squad who's equally as good. And when you look at Baltimore's 3 losses, they lost to undefeated Pittsburgh, 1 loss Minnesota, and 2 loss Indianapolis. So definitely, Kevin will get it right. There's no glaring hole that he's got. He's just lost to some really good teams. So Sousa, without a doubt, is one of the best defenders in the league. Merrick is solid. Theodore Rogers is solid. So I do expect to start seeing the results come in for him because his schedule is going to get a little bit easier after week 8, where he won't have to potentially face Pittsburgh anymore. But again, some of the challenging games will be Denver, New England, and Tennessee. But if he can if he can beat DWK and then take both games against Cleveland and really thump Cincinnati again, he should be able to get himself in a good position for a potential playoff run. In the South, I mentioned Carolina. They are just on fire. They're doing a great job. Part of that is Zelensky, but they also have this really stingy scoring defense that behind Pittsburgh is probably the best scoring defense. Uh, Pittsburgh's number one, Carolina's number two. Both those teams do a lot with their defenses, but the difference is Carolina has a much better passing game than Pittsburgh does. So Zelensky he's been solid since he's been in the league. I think he's like a fifth-year quarterback. Tampa Bay's a little bit of a shock. Mario is doing a really good job. As you can see, the offense is not the reason, it's the defense. It's kind of like real life Tampa Bay squads, right? Where the defense is the reason why they do really, really well. Um, so it'll be interesting to see how they continue to progress. The one loss recently was to Minnesota. We talked about them already. So he should be able to get back on at least win one before Carolina comes to town. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to beat Carolina. Carolina right now is really, really good, but I think Tampa Bay is poised very well to make a playoff run. In the other South, Jacksonville Starfinders come back. They're doing it largely behind the arm of McCulloch, who was one of SNCFL's all-time great quarterbacks, picked in the 5th round, and you can see why. But he's been nothing but solid since he's been in the league. Now, he is throwing quite a few interceptions this year. They'll have to fix that. But part of it is teams are starting to stack up against the pass of McCulloch, which is just something that you're going to have to worry about if you're Jacksonville. So you got to diversify, get the running game going a little bit more. Rick, who is at Indianapolis, has done a good job. They're on a 3-game winning streak. One could argue they really haven't played anybody other than Carolina who thumped them. But it doesn't matter. I mean, if you look at the games coming up, they don't really play anybody excessively hard until they get to week 10 when they play New York. But that back schedule of Oakland, Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh is going to be pretty brutal. So Rick needs to get as many wins as he can in this stretch before he kind of goes through the gauntlet. A team that is much better than they're showing right now is Tennessee. This is Bama. Yeah, he got slaughtered by Carolina, but got beat pretty convincingly by Pittsburgh, but they're both undefeated teams. He did lose to Jacksonville, but he beat them previously. This schedule is kind of conducive to him being able to make a run, and he could potentially win the division still. So we'll see how that pans out. Bama in SNCFL has proven that he's a really good coach. Probably no shock to see Templar Hill. We mentioned him in the past video. He just reloads. Ash is continuing to do well. Ash has been a butt of many jokes in this league, mostly because he's just had a really bad career and someone overpaid draft-wise last season for him with draft picks. But I think Shark is proving that uh, JP didn't overpay. It's just a matter of finding the right system that he can be successful in. As you can see, he had 23 interceptions last season and almost getting close to that, but he's only thrown 3 so far this season, averaging over 300 yards. This is statistically probably one of his best seasons so far, so great job, Templar, on getting the most out of him. When you look at New York Giants, they took both games against Dallas. That's really good. They did lose to the Jets and lose to New England, but they should be able to beat Miami and they should be able to beat Buffalo. The big challenge for them will be in Week 16 with them taking on San Francisco. Witten, who's a rookie quarterback out of Maryland, is just having a really good season. His interceptions are high, but again, he's a rookie quarterback, so it kind of makes sense that he uh, might be struggling a little bit with that. The team to keep an eye on is Skeltor at Philadelphia. Uh, he knocked off San Francisco, who previously was a one-loss team. They had lost the previous week when they were undefeated. But when you look at who he's lost to, he lost to New York, he lost to New England. Um, but this is one guy who can really make a run. And now he's starting to get his passing game online, and that's only going to make him very, very tough. So if he can take the games against Dallas, I think he's right back in the race. And minus the New York Jets game, all those games are winnable for him. Uh, on the East, the Jets have taken over the East. It kind of sucks for Shark. There was a little bit of controversy in this game with New England and New York, which Shark won the first game and then lost the second. The controversy happened right here, which is New England was driving down the field, was in range of a 41-yard field goal. Their kicker had hit from 51 yards earlier. He may have actually hit another one over 40. Now, the key thing is the wind was blowing into the kicker, which means that 41-yard kick was actually a 51 now. But still, he had already hit 51, right? So instead of kick the field goal with a minute and two left, the New England Patriots decided to go for it. Now, this one's hard for me because in real life, I've seen coaches go for it. And there's a lot of reasons why they do. One of the reasons is maybe you're worried about New York's ability to score. Bear in mind, the New York Jets are the number one rated offense in the league. Of all the teams in the league, they are the ones who can score the fastest. So you don't want to leave any time, especially like 45 seconds left for Spriggs, who's our quarterback, because he can score. That team is geared towards scoring very fast. But on the flip side, another reason for doing it is maybe they wanted just to run the clock out or get closer to make sure it was a short shot. I'll tell you, I kicked. So I will say trying to kick into a 10 mile per hour wind as a kicker is not the easiest thing to do. I imagine at the pro level, it's a lot easier. I wasn't a pro kicker, so I wouldn't know. But I would tell you that with a 10-mile per hour wind blowing into you, a lot of coaches want to get that uh, field goal as close as possible. So some coaches would actually go for it, especially knowing that Allman has largely been very, very good throughout the game. So you might make the chance to go for it. Now, I would question the throwing the ball, maybe, but especially when you have a really good running back in Bean, who is New England's running back. But I think the challenge here is Shark's point is that I think he said I think he normally plays balanced or conservative. They should have kicked the field goal. The CPU should have done it, but for whatever reason, the coach decided not to. Now, if you were set to aggressive, they'd probably go for it uh, because they're trying to get closer and make sure that they win the game. But in ball bound, this isn't an issue because there's a setting that overrides and allows you to kick the field goal rather than go for it in these circumstances, especially if you're within that range. There isn't one of those in draft day sports. I think one of the issues compounding this is that Wolverine Studios has said that they haven't seen this pop up before. So regardless, it stings. Nobody wants to lose this way, but stranger shit has happened. Now, for New York, they're in the driver's seat. They still got to play a first place schedule, so they still get Dallas, they still get Indianapolis, they still get Pittsburgh. They were going to play Oakland regardless. Um, so those are four games that are harder games for them. But again, DP, once he gets in that top spot, he's really hard to get out of it. Whereas Shark doesn't have an easy schedule because he's still got to play Oakland, he's still got to play Dallas. But he doesn't get like Indianapolis, he gets Jacksonville instead. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. My hope is Shark can put the loss behind them and bounce back. They lost to Denver this last week, as we'll talk about in a minute. Denver's actually a really good team this year, so that's not a shock. But he gets really 4 easy games ahead of him to start rebuilding that, and all he's got to do is hope that New York loses at least one of those games, if not a couple of them, and he should be right back in it. I think New England's still a playoff team. I don't think anybody's gonna worry about that. We talked about Spriggs, and one of the reasons why I say that Spriggs can easily turn a game around. Oh, I'm already on them. So oops, don't want that. I want that. Uh, is if you look at Spriggs, he doesn't have a great arm, but he's got really good intelligence, really good accuracy. And if you look at these stats, this is a guy who's built for scoring. And then when you factor in the wide receivers, I mean, Roberts, Benton, Martin, all fat. I'm sorry, Roberts, Burton, and Martin are all fast. They have the ability to score really easily. So I kind of get what the coach in New England might have been thinking, but again, the common science would be kick the damn field goal. And if you miss it, uh, well, that sucks. But if you don't kick it, now you're going to be regretting and wondering what if I had hit it. So I mentioned San Francisco. They're on a 2 game losing streak after my last video where I was saying how great they were and how they were going to make it to the championship game. I still think that that is possible. Stewart has the ability to make a run. They got to beat Denver this week. It starts there. If they don't beat Denver, I think that they're going to win the division, but they may fall behind people like Dallas and Carolina, or Dallas, Minnesota, and Carolina for that 1 and 2 seed that they really want to get. Ford is having a great season. Martin's starting to cool a little bit. I think what's killing them is their inability to score. Whereas before they were able to do that, and they've been relying on the defense. It's a similar thing with Pittsburgh, right? Is Pittsburgh defense starts letting people score, Pittsburgh's going to be in trouble because the team philosophy is shut down the other team, and then have your offense do just enough to win. In the West, it's between Denver and Oakland. We talked about Denver. They have a really good quarterback in Lavelle, who's having a great season. I think he's the league leader right now. Johnson's one of the better wide receivers. I don't think he's the league leader. I think one of the Texans is actually a league leader. So JP's doing a great job with his passing offense. We'll look at that in a second. But Denver's got some hard games coming up, including 2 against Oakland. If they can beat San Francisco and then take one of those 2 games against Oakland, I think they got a real shot at winning the division. The hard thing is taking 2 games against Oakland. Peter is one of the best coaches. Doesn't matter what his record is. He will do very well. And again, he's not playing. He's got a relatively easy, straightforward schedule coming up. Granted, his last 2 games are probably his hardest, although New England in Week 12 is going to be a challenge. The big issue that they have right now is Denham. It doesn't show, but he is really beginning to struggle. So if you look here, his last 3 games, he can't hit the broadside of a barn. So at some point, and even against San Diego, he was struggling. So at some point, Peter's going to have to make a decision what he wants to do with Denham, because Denham is becoming more and more of a liability. The thing that's bailing him out repeatedly is Leonard, who's just having a great season minus that 1 game. He's either going to start slowing down the throws and letting Leonard win the game for him, which Peter can do that, or he's going to start thinking about, is there an alternative to Denham, or how do I get Denham to actually do well? I think he's got Raynor mentoring him, and for those who don't know who Raynor is, Raynor's the greatest quarterback in the history of the WWPF. He's a 40-year-old guy. As you can see here, he's just had a immaculate career. So This is a guy who actually Peter probably could turn to and would probably do really, really well. I don't think Peter's ready to do that because you're talking about a 40-year-old quarterback whose arm isn't as strong as it once was, but it's still relatively strong. I also think that there's always the hidden potential or hidden traits. I'll use Hollingsworth, who was Pittsburgh's great. Where Hollingsworth was still able to be really productive, even though he had an arm strength of like 70 by the time he retired. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I did mention Houston. They only have one win. This is JP, but the wide receivers are doing really, really well. Um, I'm not a big fan of Tennant, but I mean, if you look at it, Bullock is probably the better of the quarterbacks. I think that I'm not quite sure why he's not playing, but uh, when you look at the receivers, they have like two in the top five with Gavin and Spencer. Spencer, of course, is a fifth-year player. These are good stats for him. He's been 1,000-yard receiver in both of the last two seasons. He's on pace to be again this year. And then Gavin has just been a phenomenal receiver throughout his career. He's in his fifth year as well, out of Nebraska, and this guy's just a really good wide receiver. So I think if Houston's defense can actually start stopping people, I think that they have a chance because the defense is really the issue here is they just can't stop anybody. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. If we look at the league leaders, just real quick, what you'll see is Lavelle is leading the league in passing yards, touchdowns as well. Spriggs is right up there with them. Spriggs, of course, leads the league in passer rating. Ford is ahead of Lackey in rushing yards. Keep an eye on Watson as well, and as Leonard, they're both really good. Theodore Rogers is scoring almost at will, followed by Bryant, Lackey, and Leonard. Receiving yards, Gavin and Spencer are 1 and 2. Cecil Apple's really good at Dallas. Allard's a rookie out of Maryland who's playing for Detroit. And then, of course, you have Johnson. Sutton is continuing to light up the scoreboard with 11. He's having a really, really strong season. Definitely probably the favorite of Colwell when you get into the red zone. I think he leads the league in points. Um, Sacks, the two New England guys are starting to run away with it, although you still have the Ravens guys as well with Sousa. Sousa still is one of the best defensive ends in the whole league, but Sharks doing a great job with those two, with Jackson and Wallace. Interceptions, no change. Total still up there and still running away with it. That's kind of where we're at. If you want to know more or want me to talk about a specific topic, let me know. But week 7 will run on Friday. It'll be interesting to see how it kind of stacks out. So thank you for your time. If you like this video, hit the like button. Have a great night.